practice together again. But I'm going to begin with what over the last 4 years has become another tradition on the New Year retreat. So this is that on New Year's Day we have a story. So I'm going to read you a story, and this is about the events of yesterday evening. And it's very much about it from the point of view of the beings who inhabit the landscape. So I'd like to show you photographs, but most of those beings don't take a good photograph. Actually, they don't take a photograph at all because they're invisible. And we also have somewhere a photo of the Taraloka cats, but I think that has disappeared in some strange way as well. So if you know the Taraloka cats, you can imagine our 2 black and white cats. And the picture we might be able to have by the end of the story, perhaps. But those cats are part of this story, and Smudge and Mr. P, I think, are technically semi-feral cats that live in our garage, and they are also very affectionate, and we have long, good relationships with them. They have now lived here longer than anybody else, longer than anybody in the community. And on cold afternoons like this, the 2 of them queue up outside the office door to go in, I think at the stage where the team goes in to start the tech work on this afternoon session. So Smudge and Mr. P might, I don't know, they might even be watching now. So we can't see them, but they might be able to see. So this story, well, it's developed over the years. There's some characters in it which have appeared several times now, and it has humour and seriousness. And when I normally tell the story at Taraloka, then we're sitting in an intimate circle, and it's that kind of storytelling. And you can hear people's responses. So this afternoon, to me, it feels a bit different, but I'm also conscious, gosh, this is storytelling to the wider mandala. Okay, so there's an interest there. And then after that, I'll just fairly simply introduce the Metabhavana. So this is the New Year story of 2020, passing into 2021. Once upon a time, and under a full moon, it was New Year's Eve at Taraloka. A Deva and a Devi were sitting in the far copse, sipping their New Year's Eve cup of nectar, which was caffeine-free and with no additives. The younger Devi said to the old wise Deva, "Grandad Deva, what will we do on this unusual New Year's Eve?" The elder Deva said to the younger Devi, "Look beyond," which is always good spiritual advice. Look beyond. There are lanterns lit on the Taraloka lawn and lights shining from the Tara cabin. Perhaps there will still be a special ritual on this moonlit night. They decided to set off, as they knew the importance of showing up and wouldn't wish to arrive late. As they walked through the furthest clearing, bowing to the little Rupa on the way, they met other beings gathering in the landscape who were similarly excited. A little elf was clapping her hands and saying to a passing fairy, "There's going to be a ritual, there's going to be a ritual." A tree spirit skimmed down the bark of a birch tree and said that she had heard it in the air that bowls had been filled with birdseed. How marvellous! 2 water sprites who were drying their webbed toes by the teardrop pond quickly joined them. Even the grumpy goblin hobbled along, grumbling and muttering. Where are they? Where are they? Where have all the retreatants gone? Of course, retreatants nowadays weren't what they used to be. when they slept 20 to a room and lived on a daily restricted diet of rice cakes and half a banana. But now they are not even here. The beings made their way to the earth-sky garden. They glanced at the sheep who are huddled together in the field, plotting how to enter the mandala in the new year. The beings gathered outside the large windows of the shrine room. Some even gently pressed their invisible noses to the glass. Inside, just a single solitary woman was evoking the beings that dwell in the Taraloka landscape. Strangely, more voices seemed to echo around her. The tiny elf felt a little upset that she wasn't mentioned in the incantation, but saw this as an opportunity to go beyond self, even though her self was already very, very small. In fact, the letter S had completely dropped off. By now, the beings from the landscape were beginning to feel tired and jolly hungry. The gloomy goblin said that this year there wasn't even a whiff of a hot mince pie. Meanwhile, in the Taraloka garage, the two black and white cats were pricking up their ears. Smudge, brave and full of bravado, Smudge is the further one in the photograph there, turned to Mr. P, who was more quiet and contemplative, as you can see. "Tell me," said Smudge, "shall we go over as well?" Mr. P replied, "Yes, let's go. We are the most long-standing residents here, and we've heard most of the teachings already in the warmth of the office. We are truly members of the mandala. But let's be respectful and silently practice just sitting at the edge of the lawn." So Smudge and Mr. P gave a final lick to their glossy coats and made their way to the garden. Then something wonderful happened under the enchantment of the moonlight. The door of the shrine room opened and the solitary woman appeared holding a bowl. Her noble friend graciously descended from the heights of the loft rooms with another bowl in her hands. They walked to the lawn where the lantern shone brightly. The door of the Tara cabin opened, and shadowy figures stepped out with their bowls. There was the beat of a drum in the night air. The women at Taraloka began scattering food for the beings in their landscape. The women gave handful after handful after handful of tiny, nourishing seeds, which would warm those cold bodies in the damp, in the frost, in the snow. The tiny elf sat in the rough grass and fed seed after seed to a trembling. Finally, with empty bowls and full hearts, the women left the garden and stepped back into their shrine rooms. However, the beings from the landscape lingered longer. This year, they simply stood in reverence and respect. The tree spirits balanced high among the branches of the copper beech. The water sprites perched on the delicate stems in the pond, while the fairy and the little elf held hands. They all knew that in the faraway places of the mandala, other creatures had been nourished, and other unseen beings were still standing in their spaces. Even the gloomy goblin felt a shift in his being and a softening around his unhappy heart. The beings on the landscape were deeply grateful and knew that it was the night that they would always remember. So now the epilogue. Mr. P and Smudge were walking back through the car park. Smudge said, "Something arose for me in the just sitting. What will happen to us when we die?" Mr. P paused thoughtfully and then replied, "We will be reborn as spirits in the Taraloka landscape which we love." Smudge said, "What happens if you die first?" Mr. P replied, "I will be there waiting to welcome you, Smudge. We will protect the mandala together." Meanwhile, the Deva and the Devi were walking back past the teardrop pond. The younger Devi said to the old wise Deva, "Grandad Deva, I feel full of joy, but how are we and the other invisible spirits nourished? We can't eat that food on the lawn." The elder Deva smiled and said to the younger Devi, "We are deeply nourished by all the well-wishing, kindness and love flowing here, and which permeate our being, transparent as we are, and bless us on this special night of the year. We become full of gladness and gratitude." They continued to walk on through the moonlit mandala, and then the old wise Deva paused and spoke again. "Let's make a New Year's Eve resolution and invite the other Devas and Devis to join us. In the coming months, in those times when Taraloka might feel cold and bleak, we will go to the shrine room and practice there. We will bring our invisible bodies with their unseen brightness. We will chant our mantras like the music of the spheres heard only in higher realms. No one will know that we are there, but someone might see the door unexpectedly opening, or they might hear the creak of the floorboard as we make our offerings. And they will feel the mystery and beauty of the atmosphere and know that it is waiting to welcome all the women when they come again from places near and far away. All the women when they come from places near and far away. And that night, the lights on the lawn glowed for many hours under the moon and under the stars. There was the tremor of green Tara in the winter wind, and the whisper of her name reverberating throughout the mandala. Om Tare, Tutare, Ture, Swaha. It's a bit embarrassing to nearly cry in your own story, but so we'll move on now to a period of the Metabhavana, just a period of gentle practice. We're very aware of the amount of positive practice that we've already shared around compassion, gratitude, mudita, and now just relaxing into metta and trusting the effect of those practices, of all our practices over the last 5 days, and just the benefit of doing it time and time again. However you might feel, however it might be, just coming back and practicing, building up our experience and drawing on it. So just with that sense of trust and ease and relaxation, let's share the Metabhavana. So I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to settle in. I won't lead in, and I'll just ring the bells for the stages, and we'll have a final period of just sitting. So beginning with settling to our practice. We don't really have time for just sitting. If in your space you feel you do have that time before the groups, then do just sit on for a few minutes. But others of us will just need to take the next 15 minutes before we meet in the groups.